Have you ever had a moment in life so terrifying, so intense, that you swear to yourself, never again? These are the moments that haunt you, the ones that send shivers down your spine long after they've passed. Moments where the line between reality and something darker blurs. Stories that make you question the very nature of the world around you. Tonight, we dive into 7 chilling stories, moments that changed everything, leaving a haunting echo in the minds of those who lived them. These are not tales of imagination, these are stories of real people, real experiences that left them uttering, "Never again." And trust me, once you hear them, you won't forget either. It started with a simple family camping trip. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend in the wilderness, surrounded by nature, far away from the noise of the city. But for Emily and her family, what began as a tranquil escape soon turned into a nightmare. The first night was uneventful, a quiet evening by the fire, the sound of crickets, and the flicker of the flames. But as the hours passed, strange noises began to drift from the woods. Faint, almost imperceptible at first, like a whisper on the wind. Emily shrugged it off. After all, they were in the middle of a forest. But when the whispers turned into footsteps, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. They were not alone. And as the shadows grew longer, someone was watching them. The fear in Emily's eyes was real. She will never forget that feeling of being hunted. They packed up at dawn and never spoke of the trip again. That's the moment Emily decided, never again. Then there was the story of Ben, a seasoned hiker, someone who had spent years exploring some of the most remote trails in the world. Nothing scared him. Or at least, that's what he thought. He was alone in the mountains of Alaska, a place so desolate, so untouched by civilization, that it felt as if time stood still. But when he found a small, forgotten cabin on the edge of a cliff, something felt off. The door creaked open, revealing an eerie silence within. The air inside was thick, as if it had not been disturbed in years. As he explored further, he found remnants of someone who had lived there, dishes on a table, clothes on a chair, but no sign of the person who once inhabited the place. Ben's curiosity got the better of him. He decided to stay the night. That was his first mistake. As night fell, he could hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside, crunching on the snow. But when he looked outside, there was no one there. The next day, he left without a word, never returning to that cabin. The terror of that night haunted him forever. Ben now swears, never again. And what about the story of Sarah? A simple hike with friends turned into something that would change her life forever. They had decided to explore an old, abandoned mine shaft, something they'd heard about on an online forum. The mine had been closed off for years, but there were whispers of treasures hidden deep inside. As Sarah and her friends ventured deeper into the shaft, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating. The air became thick with dust, and strange markings appeared on the walls, as if someone, or something, had been there long before them. It wasn't until they reached the bottom that they heard it. A faint tapping. It was subtle, like something, or someone, was trying to get their attention. Sarah tried to ignore it, but as the tapping grew louder, it became impossible to deny. That's when they saw it. A shadow moving quickly across the wall. It wasn't one of them. Panic set in. They bolted out of the mine, leaving everything behind. Sarah will never forget the feeling of something watching her, following her, lurking in the darkness. She vowed, never again. Then there's the tale of Marcus, who lived in an old Victorian house inherited from his grandparents. The house had always been a bit strange, but Marcus loved it. That was until the night he decided to explore the attic. It was a place he had always avoided, shrouded in dust and forgotten memories. But something called to him that night. When he climbed up into the attic, he felt a sudden chill in the air. As he looked around, he noticed a small wooden box in the corner, hidden beneath a pile of old blankets. Inside the box, he found old photographs of people he didn't recognize, but there was one photo that stood out. A woman, standing in front of the house, smiling, her eyes eerily familiar. Marcus could barely breathe. The woman in the photo looked exactly like his mother, but it was taken decades before she was born. Before he could react, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped. The shadows in the attic seemed to move, as if alive. Marcus ran out, and from that moment on, the house felt different. It felt alive. He hasn't been back in the attic since. Never again, he whispered to himself, knowing he had uncovered something he wasn't meant to find. The next story comes from a woman named Lily, who had always been a skeptic when it came to the supernatural. She didn't believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything that couldn't be explained by science. That was until one fateful night. Lily had been staying at a bed and breakfast in a small town, a place known for its quiet charm and vintage feel, but as she lay in bed, she began to hear soft whispers, so soft, she thought she was imagining it. But they became clearer, more distinct. They were coming from the corner of the room. When she turned, she saw something that made her heart stop, a figure, translucent, standing in the corner, watching her. Lily froze, unable to speak, unable to move. The figure slowly started to approach her, its eyes wide, as if pleading for something. And just as it reached the bed, Lily screamed, and the figure vanished. She ran out of the room, never to return to that place. Never again, she vowed. Lastly, there's the story of Mark and his friends, who decided to visit a notorious abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town. It had been closed for years, and rumors of strange occurrences and paranormal activity had surrounded it for decades. Against their better judgment, they entered the building, armed with flashlights and cameras. As they explored the dark, decaying halls, they felt the temperature drop. And the air became thick with an unexplainable tension. It wasn't long before they heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them, footsteps that weren't their own. When they turned, the hallway was empty. But the footsteps continued. Panic set in, and they ran, trying to find the exit. But it seemed as though the hospital was never ending, stretching into darkness. They finally made it out, but not before hearing the unmistakable sound of a door slamming behind them. Mark and his friends haven't spoken about it since. Never again, Mark says, his voice trembling. These are just a few of the stories that linger long after the experience ends, moments that leave you breathless. Moments that make you say, never again. They remind us of the shadows that lie just beyond our understanding, of the strange, terrifying things that can happen when we least expect them. And as you lie awake tonight, ask yourself, what if you, too, had your own never again moment? What would it be? And would you be brave enough to face it?